So today I'm going to share a technique that you can use to shift feelings and shift them actually pretty rapidly, and also a technique that really offers a different perspective on things relatively quickly. We've explored a lot of different ways of interacting with feelings, and when I talk about that, I'm talking about feelings that maybe we don't want to sit with, or they're too uncomfortable for us. And I do want to say there's no need to change feelings. I would only recommend this if something's really getting in your way in a persistent way, and it's maybe you're experiencing it beyond its utility or its helpfulness. I think before we seek to change anything, it's good to wonder what, if anything, it's trying to do for us. Because sometimes, as we talked about, a feeling could be a communication that something needs attention. And so I always want to explore that first and make sure I get any learning that's there. That being said, what we're going to explore today won't remove our ability to uh, get a learning or explore it. In fact, it may enhance it and make it more approachable. Because sometimes with certain unsavory feelings, sometimes just the magnitude of the feeling can be so much that it's hard to kind of come up for air and get new perspective. So some of the things we've talked about in the past are taking an inventory of the feeling, or really just being present to it, allowing yourself to feel it fully, welcoming a feeling. And these are all kind of cousins. They're all in the same domain of different ways of spending time with feelings, so that I hope by now feelings are not something that you fear, or that are too big a impediment. But in any case, let's get on to it. So um, for this, I would recommend uh, uh, picking a feeling. It doesn't have to be a strong one, but picking a feeling that maybe you've had some difficulty interacting with. So uh, the common ones that people talk about are fear, sadness, boredom, getting angry, um, anxiety. So if you can pick any one of those, and you may just bring up the feeling, or the feeling may be in relation to a particular story. We talked about how very often it's the story we're telling ourselves that's producing the feeling in us. But in any case, pick any one of those feelings and take a moment to get present to it. And it doesn't have to be the strongest example. You can start with something a little bit lighter on the scale right now. And so once you have that feeling, and as always, notice where it is in your body, notice what it's like to experience that. And I'm going to ask you a couple questions. And the first question is, whatever the feeling is, how do you feel about having that feeling? So, very often we have a feeling, and we also have a feeling about feeling that. So, for example, over the years, I would get frightened of things, or I would have a lot of fear, and as if that wasn't bad enough, I would get down on myself for having that feeling. So, what I'm talking about here is having a feeling about the feeling. And so just notice whatever is the feeling that you're experiencing, and then how do you feel about having that feeling? Um, you know, do you have judgment about it? Does it frustrate you? Does it upset you to have that feeling? So we want to notice, how do we feel about having that feeling? And then you can try something. So whatever you're feeling about the feeling, let's explore what happens when we change the feeling about the feeling. So whatever, let's say you're frustrated by feeling afraid. Instead of feeling frustrated, what if you were to feel curious about being afraid? Curious about how's that happening? What's it like? Uh, where did it come from? Where will it go? How long will it be here? So kind of curious, like a real genuine curiosity. And, you know, what if you were to experience wonder about having fear or amusement? What if you were amused, like, wow, this is one that I've done quite a bit. Sometimes I'm just really amused, like, wow, here this is again. Like, that's crazy that this comes up with such consistency. Um, and I think you'll notice that if you change the feeling about the feeling, very often the feeling itself may change, or certainly our ability to respond to it changes. If I get curious about it, then I kind of feel like I have a different relationship to it. I'm not overwhelmed with that feeling. Um, humor is a great one. If you can feel a sense of humor about the situation, um, that can really help the base feeling. Um, I have a friend who has this wonderful ability to laugh and to be amused and to joke about whatever's going on. Not in a way like he's not trying to distract things, but he's genuinely amused and finds things funny. And especially about himself. If he's afraid or if he's angry or something, he can find humor in it, and it's incredibly freeing. Um, so what I would recommend is the next time you notice yourself kind of stuck in a feeling, get curious about, okay, what am I feeling about that? And play around with changing other feelings on top of that. Um, so that's kind of the most basic level of this exploration. And I've heard about, there are a couple sources for this exploration. So one that I heard was Virginia Satir, who was a very famous family therapist. Um, she used to ask her clients, okay, you have this feeling, and how do you feel about having that feeling? So I believe she was one of the first people to explore that. And then there's a guy in the NLP community named Michael Hall who began exploring this, and he calls that a meta state, a state about a state. And he went on to write a couple hundred books about this, and really just found many ways of exploring this. But I wanted you to understand the basic technique of, here's your feeling, ask yourself, what are you feeling about that? And then explore changing the meta state, or the feeling about the feeling, to a different state, and see where that leads. Here's another way you can also explore it that's quite powerful. So I'll start again with the base feeling, like, again, maybe I'm afraid about something. How do I feel about that? Well, maybe I'm frustrated about feeling fear. And how do I feel about feeling frustrated? So now I'm stacking up another layer. And I might be, well, I'm a little upset with myself about being frustrated about being afraid. All right, so how do you feel about being upset? And you just keep backing up. And what I've found when I do this is, at a certain point, it's almost like you lose track of the original thing. And I was going through an example of this the other day with something that I was stuck with. And finally, I was like, oh, I'm kind of hopeful about my curiosity about uh, you know, the intensity of this frustration about anger. So it just went this whole chain, and at the other side, I just sort of popped out of it, and it completely transformed my state. Um, so I encourage you to explore this and have some fun with it. I found it to be, you know, virtually foolproof in terms of shifting a state. Um, and the last thing I want to say about this is whether you're a coach or a therapist or just a good friend, or you're offering an ear to somebody. Very often, if in our listening to somebody describing their situation, if we can offer different states in ourselves, that can give them uh, a chance to perhaps explore that response, that feeling about the feeling in relation to whatever they're doing. So, so for example, let's say I'm really upset about my fear of something, and I'll share it with a coach. And if the coach goes, oh, that's interesting, and they really, they really like, oh, tell me more. That's, all of a sudden I get an opportunity to see somebody responding to my response in a different way. And I'm like, well, maybe it isn't the catastrophic thing that I'm imagining. Maybe it's something that I can also be curious about. And I think that's one of the powerful things that we can offer the people that we're coaching or that we're supporting as friends, is just having a calm and centered response, or a curious response, or an empathetic response to what they're going through, or an amused response. So in the case of my friend that I mentioned, when I would share something with him, he wouldn't laugh at me, but he would laugh at the predicament. And very often he would laugh at himself, and it would get me to laugh. And I'll tell you, laughing about a problem can feel so much better than being serious about it or being upset about it, and sort of adding insult to injury. So I hope you have a lot of fun with this, and I would love to hear how it goes.